They be controlling all the dove and they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dove and they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. We're going to go over all of the most important stories, and because tonight has a lot of very important debates going on and different events, we're actually going to make this a super short show. We're going to hit the headlines, and we're going to make best use of your time. I understand that a lot of folks will not be able to watch this live, but I hope you watch the replay because there is a lot of important things that have just happened. There are also Fugel family members in the military saying that their bases were put on high alert. So whether that is true or not, one thing I will say is it is something that I believe could happen, especially after what just went down. Prigozhin's plane just went down, and if you do believe we had anything to do with that, then yeah, that would be a good reason for us to do that. And it might be a clue that there was something there. Either way, though, first off, we have South Korea holds rare air raid drill, but many citizens ignore it. Sirens wailed on Wednesday as South Korea held its first nationwide air defense drills in 6 years to counter North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats. But many people appeared to ignore calls to seek shelter. This is actually what we talked about prior, that they were supposed to stop all movement and go inside. But apparently people don't give a... It said that air raid sirens blared at 2 p.m. on a rainy, hot summer afternoon in downtown Seoul. Community leaders in yellow jackets and hats with the, quote, civil defense logo asked people to get off the streets for about 15 minutes before the alert was eased. But many pedestrians did not pay heed to those requests or rush to find designated shelters or nearby underground spaces. It says, quote, I didn't know about the drill, and people didn't seem to care about it much. I don't believe there will be an actual war either, says Na Un, a 52-year-old architectural design told Reuters. So, one of the most important parts is if something does go down, I bet they will be horribly unprepared for that. But this also might give us a clue into how the people there think. They most likely think it's a bunch of BS. And who knows? Maybe it is. The fact that they weren't reacting to this does say that they were probably not that scared. Maybe Western media is actually painting a different picture than what's true. Either way, North Korea is definitely a big part of the fear campaign that media is always pushing on us. So we'll talk about this and much, much more tonight on Marfoogle TV. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
All the narrative they be controlling. All the dove and they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dove and they be sowing.
All right, what is going on, guys? If you did not know, today's show has a full bibliography of all of our sources, every single article, tweet, video, picture, document. We know that today a lot of folks are going to be watching the debate or watching Tucker and T-Man go at it. In fact, I just checked, and Brian Krasenstein on his Twitter did a poll. I think there was 12,000 votes or something like that, and his audience is mostly on the left side of things. And even half of them said that they were watching Tucker. So I am pretty amazed on how many people are actually watching both compared to some of the last events that happened where nobody tuned in. So that's a good thing, I think. But again, who knows? It's all a bunch of ganda anyways. As far as the show, you're going to go over and look for today's thumbnail. And when you find we are in for trouble, something ain't right, click on that and it will bring you to a full bibliography of all of our sources and every single article, tweet, video, picture, document. Not only that, there's extra stuff there. There's all of the web only. There's stuff that essentially is only on our website. So make sure to go over and check all that out. Also, remember to go over to marfooglenews.com/friends. Dex, the air raid sirens. So this is kind of funky. We've talked about this for weeks now because they essentially said that they were going to tell people to get inside and to get off the street for 15 minutes. Many people either did not know or they did not give a hoot. Essentially, people did not go in and seek shelter. You could look at this as a bad thing or possibly a good thing if it says that most of the people there don't think that it's actually going down. What do you think?
Well, I think it's indicative of what state of mind most citizens are in, and it's usually not one that relates to what the government is telling them to do, whether it's for their own good or not, whether it is related to current events, whether it's for their own good or not. I think it's really a lot of people live in the moment in their phones, in their digital world, and for themselves, and they're not necessarily paying attention. Because the irony is, a lot of us knew about that drill because we talked about it here, and we're not even living there. Some of them may not have known it, but many of them probably didn't care, and they just move on about their lives. And that's the scary part, because when it is real, will they react the same way? And how will they know when it's real versus when it's a drill?
And Dex, many people are saying that you sound a little bit different, but I just wanted to point out that it's kind of like the boy who cries wolf. When this thing actually goes down, are these people just going to keep business as usual? Don't know what's going to happen there, but we'll end up updating you on it. If this happened in the United States, it would be a gigantic deal. Telling everybody that they are restricted movement for 15 minutes. They had thousands of employees out directing people, and people just didn't listen. So what happens when the real thing happens? And who knows, the real thing could be a false Freddy. So we have no idea how that's going to work out. And then we have North Korea fails in second attempt to launch spy satellite as a rocket crashes into sea. It said that North Korea's second attempt to place a spy satellite in orbit has failed after the rocket booster experienced a problem during its third stage. State media reported as space authorities vowed to try again in October. The first attempt in May was also ending in failure when the new Cholima-1 rocket crashed into the sea. Thursday's pre-dawn launch came in the first hours of an 8-day window that North Korea had given for the attempt. It says the nuclear-armed country has been seeking to place what it would be its first military spy satellite into orbit, saying it eventually plans a fleet of satellites to monitor moves by U.S. and South Korean troops. It says, quote, the flights of the first and second stages of the rocket were normal, but the launch failed due to an error in the emergency blasting system during the third stage flight. So most people look at this as a good thing that they are not launching satellites, or at least this very specific kind of military spy satellite. But some are looking at it like, is this sabotage? Did the U.S. or some three-letter agency get in there and were able to do something? Were they able to take it out in the air? Who knows? Again, this is something that many of us are applauding because nobody wants a military satellite of North Korea over us or South Korea. They do have satellites already up in there, so I don't know why they're having such a problem launching this one, but that's, again, something we don't know if this is actually a spy satellite. This could have been a weapon, and maybe the governments of the world knew that and took it out in before it even happened. Who knows? But this is the second attempt and the second failed attempt. At the same time, South Korea is basically, they don't even care if it did happen, so who knows? And then expert warns that fake Prigozhin body double may be on board of the crashed jet. So with this whole Prigozhin thing, it is a gigantic deal, and media is definitely going to, push this to the very, very top of the list for at least a few days, because they are already saying that if Wagner is out of the picture, and they're supposedly saying his right-hand man, then the rest of the Wagner group, which is not the biggest threat there, it would just be dissolved, that it would essentially fall apart. Without Wagner, you still have a Russian military. Wagner is small in comparison to any of the militaries. It is a large private military, but it is exactly that. It is a PMC. It's a privately owned company, essentially. So I don't think it's going to really, sway the outcome of a conflict. So what is the actual end game of this whole thing? Dex, so the plane crash, first of all, nobody really believes it right now. Some people believe he's on witness protection at McDonald's right now, because this just doesn't make sense. And it most definitely doesn't make sense after the silly mutiny that Vlad would do it to him, because nobody really believes that Vlad was actually mad at him. If he was mad at him, he would have, taken him out that day.
Yeah, that is correct, Adam. And a lot of people are questioning it because there was a second plane. The second plane took off from the same airport. That plane had similar numbers, or numbers that had been used with Prigozhin's team or himself. And that plane, actually, they had one report said it turned around after the incident and landed back. And then another report came out later and said it did take off and land where it was supposed to go. So they were hoping that maybe he was on that plane. That leads to a lot of speculation and questioning about this. And I think, a lot of others have made speculations, and even based on the actions of Putin, seen that some of the actions of his coup had brought out, people that weren't loyal to Putin, and he was able to take care of them, so to speak, or remove them from positions of power. So if that was the case, a lot of people had speculated that maybe the whole thing was staged, given the fact that, he basically marched his way towards Moscow and was really pretty much not stopped. So if that would be the case, then having him taken out would just be, yet again another show to cover the plan. And in reality, he could still be alive and be in exile or in retirement, or doing something else.
And remember, when he was marching into the streets of Russia, how Western media painted it is that the people were cheering him on and saying, "Take over our horrible dictator." But you have to realize people in Russia are actually proud to be Russian. Just as people could look from the outside and say, most people hate America when you see our media and things like that. But most people here, I believe, are proud to be an American. At least of all the people I know there's a very huge set of younger people that aren't, but most of us are proud to be American. And no matter who is in charge of our country, same thing, they are still proud to be an American. So Russia's the same way. Some may not like Vlad, but they are cheering on the offensive side of the war. Why would they be cheering on Prigozhin if they didn't agree with the war? Why would they be greeting him as a war hero? And especially, this isn't just regular soldiers that are coming down the street that they're cheering on. This is a private military company that all of these people know that these guys are drinking, partying, and essentially, paid huge chunks of money to do it. Why would they be cheering them on? Maybe, I don't know, because we did get it reported that during that mutiny, Russia actually shut down worldwide all of the Google News stuff that was coming in. In fact, they shut down at least 5 of the major websites that people would get the news, say Western news, of Western nations covering it as a mutiny. So if you were a local and you didn't know this was happening, you would see Prigozhin and go, "Oh, that's Prigozhin. Those are our guys that are over there taking Ukraine," and you would be cheering them on. But guess what? That perfectly framed for people, these guys to be walking down the middle of the street with very few guys compared to the Russian military, and cheering them on, and it looked to the world as if, oh, this mutiny is everybody is going to just drop their weapons and they're going to take over Russia. But since this whole thing happened, it's like, it's silly. There's so much silliness around this thing, and then Lukashenko steps in as his best bud, and I've known him for 20 years, and solves the whole thing and says, "Yeah, why don't you guys hang out at my house for a while? Chill out while you and Shogu work your stuff out. Come on over here. We got jobs for you, whatever else." And then right away, we see these huge moves saying that they're going to move nukes into Belarus. We see Poland and Belarus going in this exchange of words. You see Belarus and Lukashenko saying that if we're attacked, that's the only reason we'll get in. And then Wagner moves there, and then that gives Poland the reason to say, well, we need to beef up our border because the Wagner group is there. Now this happens. Something is not right. Something big is being planned at the same time, just in the last week, and I don't think it was expected to happen this early. They're talking about a certain thing coming back from 2019 that's going to disrupt all of our lives. Something big is coming. Mark my words. Dex, go ahead.
Well, and let's not forget, I think it was Monday or even yesterday. It was probably yesterday. Within the last 24 hours or less, we would reported that Prigozhin had been in Africa and he'd filmed a video there and he had posted that on his on the social networks. So, it's an interesting question. Like, did he go from there to Moscow to then jump on a plane to St. Petersburg and all this happened in that short amount of time? Or is there something else going on here? Or why did they present him being in Africa if he was really in Moscow? So there's a lot of questions on this one. It's um, really interesting.
Somebody said, worst take ever on Russia. I guess to that person, where do you get your take on Russia? Because Russia and RT puts out what they want you to hear. They put out whatever Ganda they're putting out. Same with our side. Both sides are putting Ganda. That's my take because I'm trying to see through all of that BS. And if I'm wrong, I will most definitely correct myself in the future. But watch, something is going to go down. And there's a lot of people that agree with me that Vlad isn't really mad at him, because if he was, then that's a pathetic excuse of a country leader if he lets him do a mutiny and then lets him go. Do people really think that PMC, no matter how big it is, could go up against the Russian military? And then to say that the Russian military secretly is totally trying to do a coup on their entire country, that doesn't make sense. They weren't all about to drop their weapons. And even so, even half of the Russia takes say that essentially they did it to draw out the traitors. None of it actually looks like reality. It all looks like it is fake. It all looks like it is some sort of geopolitical play to move things forward. And it very well could be groups above them that are in charge of all of the countries. And this is just to put out a public image to everybody so they gobble it up. In the meanwhile, everything else is changing around the globe. Everything is happening right now at the same time. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But I think something is about to go. They said that you don't have the Russian spirit at all. I don't know what the Russian spirit is, but I can tell you when the mutiny happened, they shut down all of the local news. They cheered Prigozhin on. Why were they cheering Prigozhin on? Because he's a war hero, right? Or was it because they were taking down Ukraine? I don't know what the deal there was, but there was enough shadiness that I think that something big is going on. Is Prigozhin even perished? We've heard rumors like this all the time, and then 6 hours later, 12 hours later, we've covered huge stories, and then 12 hours later they say, "Oh, it was a mistake." It's been this entire war that they have covered huge stories like Ghost Island, the Ghost of Kiev, or Snake Island, all these things, and they cover it. They say one thing absolute, and then 12 hours later, 24 hours later, oh, it actually wasn't like that. For him to perish, to think that this is going to, who knows, maybe this might literally somehow give them an excuse to end this whole thing. They all agree to something, and then it totally goes away because CV is coming in the door. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. I think it is one big circus, and I think that I think that there's a bunch of BS going on. Is this Putin's next front line? Russia planting brainwashed spies in foreign governments, whistleblower warrants. Dex, do you want to cover this?
So what they're insinuating, and I guess a whistleblower is coming out and saying it through their own experience, is that they are using young adults that are coming over from, and particularly targeting countries that are in the like Bulgaria, Serbia, North Macedonia, Bosnia, those locations that are like the Balkans area, targeting them and taking these younger, let's call them student aged children, not children, but young adults, and bringing them over for educational purposes and schooling, but then indoctrinating them and trying to get them back into their countries and getting them into political positions. It's not something that just like happens overnight. This is a long process and something that has, infiltration of, political figures, takes a generation to do. It takes a long time to do. You've got to, start at a young age and work them all the way through their political career, so to speak, because they don't, young adults don't become, significant politicians right away. Very few of them do. So what they're suggesting is that those specific countries I just named are all on the short list in what they're calling a geopolitical chess match or chess game with the West, in which Putin has been working with his, in his country to infiltrate those countries' political systems with students, exactly as I described.
Now, just to go back, somebody said, the same person said, they are literally having memorials at Wagner offices right now. Wagner itself announced he was dead. What credibility does Wagner have? You're talking about a group where many documentaries have gone in with PMCs and with Wagner, where they're drinking, they're partying. Literally, they're taking millions of dollars to go in and do horrendous things. And they're saying he's dead. That could be propaganda. It hasn't even been 10 hours since this happened. And that could totally be turned around. They also said that they were doing a coup. And then within 3 hours, they were like, oh, no, well, we figured it out. No worries, no coup anymore. Wagner has also said all sorts of stuff against Russia. And it's all been this circus of Wagner versus their own bosses. Like, I guess it's hard for me not to see that this is some sort of play going out. Yeah, they could say he's dead. How many people die in the U.S. that are currently living in North Carolina or living under another name? Like, there is something called witness protection, and it's a huge program. There's thousands of people that die, and their whole families see a memorial. They go to the funeral. They go to all of that. This is super high level. So I'm assuming that if they were going to do something like that, that it would be on a super high level, that he would be in Barbados or something. But we could also find out tomorrow, oh, don't worry, they're already setting it up. I'm not saying it was a body double. That's what these experts are claiming that they think it is, right? There were 2 planes. Now all of a sudden we find there's 2 planes and one went down. Maybe it was his right-hand man, but then he's going to pop up in Africa and go, psych, don't worry, I'm okay. Like, I'm just saying, just because they're having memorials doesn't mean that he's not still out there somewhere. And if he was taken out, what was the motivation? Well, we're here to believe is that Vlad took him out because he did this whole coup thing. When he did the coup, he had a perfect excuse and all of his allies would have been behind him for Vlad to just have the Russian military go in and take out Wagner. He could have literally sent a missile, had a jet fly, and just take him right out. He was walking down the street with CCTV watching him drive down within a regular car, not even a bulletproof car, and he's just driving down the street. And you think that they couldn't have taken him out then if he was truly doing a coup? But we're supposed to think, oh, well, it was more complicated than that. If somebody does a coup on your country, that's a traitorous action. If it's real, then you get taken out. Even if you got taken, and then you could say, well, that's what they did. They just waited. What was the political advantage of having him perish in this thing? The plane fell straight out of the sky. Something happened. But again, this is definitely something that the West can use for some sort of angle, and this is definitely something that the East can use, or Russia can use. So I don't know. I don't think that this is what it seems to be. Just because they're having memorials doesn't mean anything. There's plenty of times in history where people had memorials, but it turned out that they were completely okay. Dex, go ahead.
Look, if he used a body double for himself, he'll come out and say, I'm alive. If they used a body double to hide him and put him into protection or to exile him, then we'll never know. Like unless they decide to, to just admit it, but that isn't going to happen. That's the whole point. The whole point, if this is to be done in a way that is to, take him out of the scene, but not necessarily harm him, then yeah, he'll just be. You'll never know. He'll be in hiding. And so, and what would people do? They would act as if he was really lost, and that's why people are going to be mourning at his offices or at all of his friends and family and all of the people that worked with him. That's normal. That will happen if this is the narrative they're pushing.
Rip Curl makes a great point, says, but remember, Putin is a trained and experienced KGB, and they don't rush to anything. I hear you there, but I still don't think that they would need to do this. They wouldn't need to take out a plane. They could have taken him out way before this. He's been in many, many places where they could have just taken him out. Why are they taking him out now? That would assume that we're also believing that that Putin was super mad at him and horribly, horrifically mad at him for doing this coup because he's a traitor in his eyes. But then afterwards, he totally lets it all go, lets him go to Belarus, and then plays a key part in what was going to be the next step. It wouldn't make sense. They were moving to Belarus, which looks more like a strategic move by Vlad to put him there. It all looked very, very fake. The whole coup, the whole thing, and then the current coverage. But yet over there in Russia, they shut down any coverage of it. Why? Something is not right. That's like what I said. It doesn't make sense for Putin to take him out. It's kind of like it doesn't make sense for Vlad to take out his own infrastructure and hurt his own pocket to hurt somebody else that's not even involved. It didn't make sense. It's the same thing here. I don't see, if there's a motivation that you guys know about, I'll gladly add it in. I would love to hear why Vlad took him out, other than this narrative that doesn't make sense to me. The whole, because he did the coup, now he's a target. Then he would have been a target. He would have been gone way before this. And why would he be doing moves for Vlad? Maybe he is like that though. Vlad throws people off roofs all the time. And then, before we move on, remember, make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com/prep. If you haven't already, this is a great resource to get yourself a lot of freeze-dried food that will last 25 years. You'll be able to put it away and not worry about it. This is, again, something that has tripled in price in the last 3 or 4 years. In that right, if you get this today, in 5 years from now, when this is 3, 4, 5 times the price and inflation has gone nuts, you'll still have 20 years left on the shelf, and you'll have that food, and it's an amount that you know what you have. If it's a month or 2 month or 3 month, you know you have that much it right there. Not to mention, it doesn't take up much space at all because it's freeze-dried and they suck all the water molecules out of it. It's essentially vacuum sealing it down to almost nothing. Then you have a whole lot in a small amount. So you actually, I believe with the 2 or 4 buckets, and then boom, you store that, put it somewhere safe, and you're good. marfooglenews.com/prep. It helps support us. You get a giant discount of 25% off, and you're helping our channel at the same time. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep. Again, that's marfooglenews.com/prep. With everything going on, you can make the decision whether you need it or not, but most people are realizing that it is definitely good to have a backup supply. And then Russia may annex Georgian breakaway regions, according to Medvedev. Medvedev, another person who says a whole lot, but not a lot of it comes to fruition. But you do have to realize that he is still currently a high-ranking official. He was the former president of Russia, and that he is now the deputy chair of Russian Security Council. Dmitry Medvedev said Moscow may annex Georgia's breakaway regions in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. It said that the idea of joining Russia is still popular in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Medvedev, a former Russian president, wrote an article published early on Wednesday. It says, quote, "It could quite possibly be implemented if there are good reasons for that," said Medvedev. who has cast himself as one of Russia's most hawkish political voices since the forces invaded UKR starting in February of 2022. So Medvedev is essentially saying it. Again, we'll follow up and see if anything happens from that. Again, you can read the rest at marfooglenews.com. And then UKR blows up 5 jets deep within Russian territory. Dex, do you want to cover this? This is sort of an update to what we were talking about prior.
Yeah, we've talked about one of them specifically and covered the fact that they basically within a day split and got all the other jets out of that one air base where the Tu-22 was taken out. But apparently, it's actually happened numerous times now. They're saying it's up to 5 jets that have been taken out in the last 3 days, and they're also saying that the attacks are happening from within Russia. So they're not actually like, a lot of us thought maybe these were being launched from UKR and these were those flying drones, but some of them were out of that distance. And that's why a lot of people were questioning it. And some of the reports were of quadcopter style drones, which also would not go that distance. Those are usually measured in miles. So that's the latest on this. So obviously, a lot of a lot of action in the sense of potential jets are being taken out. But the other interesting thing is it's happening inside their country. So that leads to a lot of the speculation and information or propaganda that was coming from UKR saying that they did have their own special ops types forces or covert agents, whatever you want to call them, on the other side doing work over there, which also kind of goes back to a lot of the fires, the facilities that we've seen have issues or things happen at them that Russia will say, oh, it's just a plant making pyrotechnics, but then later we learn it was actually a critical plant making something specific to a nuclear boomer or something like that. So we've seen all of that, and it's sort of definitely kind of enough evidence there to say it looks like there's some plants inside the country there that are actually making some headway.
And if you go back to the very beginning of this, nobody really supported things going on in Russia. Now it seems like it's a common occurrence that targets are being hit inside of Russia. At the beginning, many people and all of the op-eds would have said, if this happens, then it's going to escalate and it's going to get out of control. It's essentially there. And it hasn't gotten out of control yet, but look at what is happening right now. We don't know if what's happening in our country is something that's happening because of what is coming, but I don't know. Something is getting planned right now from all of the Fugel family military. Everybody is saying that they are all of a sudden in the last day on some sort of high alert. So I think that something just happened here that was unexpected. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Dangerous, thank you for your support. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super sticker. And then over on DLive, thank you everybody that made it so far. Ecto1, Mr. J. Hollisey, thank you so much for following. Karen from Columbus, Poco Loco, thank you for the lemons. MC Dirty Work, Kimbria, One on B. We have Beer Juice, Yobi, and of course Holiday Kisser, thank you. And Blue Air, thank you for following. I appreciate that, and thank you. Thank you guys for supporting Independent. Thanks also over the last week, Bible Talk, Bethany Olinger, Rumble the Clown, Carol, Julie Pilkerton, Open Truth Ministry, Carol, Sharon Davis, AK Forever My Heart, Nana MT, Mystery School, and K. Parker Fraser. And then we have the BRICS' latest, more talks needed on dollar shift, Ramaphosa says. The BRICS group has agreed to hold more talks on how to reduce their reliance on the dollar, including bolstering direct use of their own currencies to trade, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said. Leaders of the bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have been discussing reducing the use of dollars for trade for their annual summit for Wednesday in Johannesburg. Now, if you take all of the reasons for prior world wars, almost, or any war, really, if you take all of the previous wars, I don't know the reason, I don't know if this had to play in Vietnam, but most of them all had something to do with somebody trying to tread on the U.S. dollar. or threatening it with a gold back this or a gold back that. This is the biggest threat to the dollar that's ever happened. Whether you think it's a legitimate threat or not, that's up to you. But there are at least 40% of the population, countries that take up 40% of the world's population, and 40 more countries that are along with that interested in joining it. And they're getting all of the, basically all of the X's and O's signed on their hugs and kisses on their contracts. So it says that we will continue discussions on practical measures to facilitate trade and investment flows through increased use of logical currencies. It says this is a matter we believe with further discussions need to take place, particularly amongst our finance ministers. So they're going further and further ahead with BRICS. BRICS is a threat to the dollar. This is a reason enough for a world war to happen because all of the Western nations want to stay on the dollar, and these guys all want to get off of it. Will it affect everything? Even if the dollar still reigns king, what happens if 40% of the population starts using something else? It's not going to be good for us. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the other updates that came out from the BRICS meeting real quick was for the first time since 2010, they actually agreed on terms for enlarging the group. So it says, we have a document which we have adopted that sets out the guidelines and principles and processes for considering countries that wish to become members of BRICS. Now, we talked about their expansion. India also talked about their expansion. But since this version of the article, it has come out that they actually did agree on the document now. So they now have a plan to move forward with that.
And this is India. The big part of BRICS is China. And everything is said, and I've been saying this for years, that China and India have to, they basically are summing up their long time feud over this border country. And they are, of course, I think it looks like they're working it out. And that was the main thing between them, was this border dispute. If China ends up giving them parts of that border back and saying, hey, you can have it, they would be done. Or if India says you can have it, but we want a seat at the table, or something gets worked out, or if you give us tons and tons of money, we're okay with you having that territory. Something has gone on, and I've been covering this for 2-3 years now. They're all of a sudden saying that essentially BRICS will not work without India and China work together. And China is really taking the lead on this. China and India are working to expand this thing. India's not. I don't think India is going to be our ally for much longer. I think they're doing a lot of two-faced stuff. So they're drilling with China militarily alongside Russia. They've moved all of their soldiers back from the borders. They're doing things that just don't make sense. At the same time, they do these stories like, oh, well, we're mad at China for this, mad at China for that. Something big is happening underneath the rug. And then Chinese Coast Guard blocks Philippine vessels near disputed shoal, but 2 supply boats breach cordon. It says, as a U.S. Navy plane circled overhead, 2 Philippine boats breached Chinese Coast Guard blockade in a dangerous confrontation Tuesday in the disputed South China Sea to deliver food and other supplies to Filipino forces guarding a contested shoal. 2 Philippine Coast Guard vessels escorting the supply boats, however, were blocked by at least 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships for about 5 hours in the tense standoff at the Second Thomas Shoal. The dangerous encounter is the latest flare-up from the long-seething territorial disputes in the busy area that involve China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Brunei. It says it's regarded as the Asian flashpoint and has become a delicate fault line in the U.S.-China rivalry. The Philippine Coast Guard invited a small group of journalists, including 2 from the Associated Press, to join its ships that secured the supply boats as part of a new strategy aimed at exposing China's increasingly aggressive actions. Oh, isn't that convenient that 2 AP writers are literally on those boats? That just seems kind of convenient. Maybe it's because they are trying to expose it, or something is getting, a narrative is being made. It's like every time a bell rings, a narrative is made. But who knows? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to protect yourself against EMP, go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can wire this into your car in less than 10 minutes, black to black, red to black on your battery, red to red on your battery, and then, of course, green to ground on a part of your frame. And this will protect your car from not only EMP strikes, but it will also protect you against a Carrington level event from the sun. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP to get $50 off per device and to help your favorite channel out. This is imperative. If you do believe that EMP is one of the biggest risks to our countries, then make sure to go get one of these. This is a tool in your arsenal that really is going to be imperative to either get home to bug in or to get out to bug out. marfooglenews.com/EMP. And then Chinese, let's see here. Well, we have India's perilous moon mission success as country becomes first to land near the mysterious South Pole. So a lot of people that I know watched this live, and they were watching the stream of this thing happen. My big question is, why are they doing it at all in the first place? Why are all these countries all of a sudden so focused on getting satellites and different craft to the moon? What is actually happening here? Now, going back to that video that popped up on YouTube, or at least people say that it did, a few years ago when YouTube shut down, and I talked about all of this yesterday, where there was a military gentleman that said supposedly the moon was going to get damaged, that the world governments weren't so much worried about an asteroid hitting us, that something was going to hit the moon. That got the game of telephone twisted, and all sorts of channels said different things, and people turned it into like a fake video of the moon getting hit, and people thought that that was end of story. The real story was this military guy. Essentially, they said that he was getting on a live stream. He had hundreds of thousands of viewers before he got taken out of the room. And he was saying that they are actually worried because in a few years that the moon was going to be damaged, hit, and either destroyed or damaged to the point where it was going to affect life here on Earth. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this is what was said back then. And again, without the moon, the Earth would have all of these issues. Some say that we wouldn't be a livable planet if our moon got destroyed, or there would be massive, catastrophes all over Earth if something happened to the moon or something serious. Going back to that, all of a sudden, the last few years, you have Israel, you have India, you have Russia, you have all of these different countries that have never tried to go to the moon before, now all of a sudden trying to go there. And it almost looks like a world effort for all of these countries to go to the moon, and maybe they're setting up shop there or something. Maybe they're setting up some sort of massive weapon that multiple countries are working on or something straight out of a movie. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying maybe something is going on that we don't know about. And I have kind of half thought this for a while. And again, you're totally welcome to disagree with me on this one, because I very well may be wrong. But I think maybe they know something that we don't. Or this is some sort of Ganda setting up for something that is, for something else. But why else would everybody be so focused on space? It's probably either for money, for war, or for prevention of something. Dex, so they did land, and they're talking about even future human habitation on the moon.
Exactly, and I think this is one of the areas, obviously, that's been sought after for potential water and potential other resources that may be critical to being able to create habitat on that. So I still think that at the end of the day, the biggest value outside of military, which will make a lot of sense when they put bases on there for whatever purposes they're going to come up with. I could think of a half dozen easily, but in addition to military installations on the moon, I can see mining slash commercialization of the moon being the biggest, one of the biggest factors. And if they can find resources that are on the moon that they can reuse either in space or on Earth and get it here cheaper and stuff that we can't produce or find or have readily available here, I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the money spent. But the whole side of what the militaries are going to be doing there, because you've got all the major militaries want to be there, from China to Russia to obviously the US. We all want to claim our place on the moon. And I think from a strategic standpoint, it is a very strategic position in the distance between Earth and the moon, obviously.
And and it would be crazy not to mention kind of the other folks' views that believe that the moon is something else entirely. What, I guess, to you, what do you believe is actually going on here? What do you think that they are actually doing this? You could say, oh, it's all just fake, but I guess what would be the motivation to do it then? What is the secret behind it? Very curious to hear what folks think. And then thank your mods. Make sure to drop an M in the chat for your mods. They're doing an awesome job down there. And of course, make sure to also go check them out on marfooglenews.com/friends. And then in Henley Maui fires, many had no warning and no way out. Those who dodged barricades survived. So basically, those who broke the laws and went around the police, which were turning people around, were the ones who actually survived. This whole thing, of course, has been, the last couple weeks has been fodder for all of media. But folks are not letting this one go because there were a lot of things wrong. There were no sirens. The police turned people back towards the fire and would not let them leave. They said it was because they were trying to prevent them from going into another fire. But now this is now more evidence that the people that did get past those police were the survivors. And somehow I heard that all of the police survived, or at least the ones in the 2 points that were barricaded. I haven't heard anything otherwise. If there is news of that, then let me know. But it says as flames tore through the West Maui neighborhood, car after car of fleeing residents headed for the only paved road. Again, the only paved road out of town in a desperate race for safety were turned back. It says a car after car was turned back towards a rapidly spreading wildfire by a barricade blocking access to Highway 30. One family swerved around the barricade and was safe in a nearby town 48 minutes later. Another drove their four-wheel drive car down a dirt road to escape. One man took in dirt road uphill, climbing above the fire and watching as Lahaina burned. He later picked his way through the flames, smoke, and rubble to pull survivors to safety. But dozens of others found themselves caught in a hellscape, their cars jammed together on a narrow road, surrounded by flames on 3 sides, and the rocky ocean waves on the 4th. Some perished in their cars, while others tried to run for safety. Every description of this thing is just heart-wrenching, and it's kind of like thinking of being on the edge of a building and falling off. Like, you just have to think about it to get chills. This is horrendous. I can see people in their cars parked, stuck, smoke all around them, and them realizing what's about to happen. We know people who are affected by this. My sister has lost people. Several people I know have lost people. And even my wife's ex-coworker is still missing. Presumed he's gone. This is really, really effed up. It said that it says, quote, I could see from the bypass that people were stuck on balconies, so I went down and checked it out, said Kikoa Lansford, who made several trips into town to look for survivors. What he found was horrible, Lansford said, with bodies and flames like a hellish movie scene. And I could see that people were on fire, that the fire was just being stoked by the wind and being pushed towards the homes. The road closures, some because of the fire, some because of down power lines, contributed to making historic numbers. Lahaina, the site of the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. But there were many other problems that day. In some ways, the disaster began long before the fires started. There were power issues. There were water issues. There were no sirens because the guy thought that people would go crazy. There were kids in their house that were sent home from school that probably didn't know there was anything going on outside because of the lack of those sirens. This, no matter what actually happened, whether it was something from above or something below, or it just straight up in negligence, this whole thing, I don't think people are ever going to let go of this. And it was horrendous. But there's more and more proof coming out that it's exactly what was said in the first 2 days after this thing happened. So our callers were right, and everybody else was right. People commented after, like Justin True called in and said, oh, the police didn't turn him around. There's videos all over the place. There are so many witness testimonials of the police. Again, the chief, who just happened to be the chief during the horrible event that happened there. God, what luck that guy has. The police turn people around. It's just it's horrendous. Dex, go ahead.
I was just going to add that two things. One, that this is being covered by the Associated Press. This is not, just some testimony or a sideline blogger or someone else, or independent media reporting this. This is AP. This is the main, and they're not just reporting it and reporting what these people are telling. They're even digging into John Pelletier, who is the chief of police, who was also the one in Vegas, which you were just speaking of. And they said during a news conference Tuesday that he had claimed that the police drove up and down the streets, knocking on doors and using loudspeakers to tell people to leave, but he would not say exactly what time they actually did that and when they did that and if that even occurred. And now the AP themselves are trying to get public records requests to get any documentation or any video or any information that can actually corroborate that story. So it's really odd that we're seeing the mainstream digging into this. This is the kind of stuff that, you would typically see others digging into.
Well, maybe there's a few good journalists out there, but usually they have a gatekeeper at the very top. There's some sort of editor that's, oh, this won't fly. We can't do that. Or they'll have words from above like not. Or maybe they want this to come out later. Maybe they want us to be pissed off about it. Later on, they'll come out with the full truth and everybody will go, that's absolutely horrendous. And that will be used to get us to look every which way but where they want us, where they don't want us to look. I don't know, but it's pretty bad. Now, speaking of what is happening right now as we speak, there is a huge debate. Highly recommend that everybody try to watch, probably watch both if you can. They're all going to be replayed. Obviously you can watch the full thing online. But Tucker and T-Man, our ex-president, former president, and some would say current, they are talking, and they're doing it at the exact same time as the GOP debate on Fox. Basically, Tucker and T-Man are saying, Fox, and they're doing their own thing. So if you want to watch that, we'll also link that down below, and it's going to be an overflow. Again, that which is got a lot of really crazy stuff in there tonight. So before you go over the overflow, I do want to say thank you again. Thank you, Dangerous. I appreciate that. And of course, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Bombard, Dogebird, Some Bad Lieutenant, I Don't Know, or IDK. Of course, Kenny Crowder, Brian Hillary, Jenny C. Papas, and Disaster Prediction App. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Dex, let's go over the web only.
Yes, there's a lot. So head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or hit that show notes link. It's down below in the description. It'll take you right to this page. Of course, we just recently got the Tucker and T-Man video up there. So if you're looking for that, you can watch it there. You can find everything else that's going on. There's a lot happening around T-Man in the political spectrum, obviously coming into this debate. And there'll be a lot more news probably tomorrow, too, with all the sound bites from all of these blowhards pontificating on what they think is important and who they will or won't support. That's some of the interesting things that are happening right now. So that's all covered. We've got as much of that on there as we can get you going into this event. And then also the notion that the other interesting one is Fox will not talk about the fact that T-Man and Tucker were having an interview today, where every other network would talk about it. But obviously there's a little bit of, a feud there between them, I'm sure. So moving on from that, we do have some updates on what's going on in UKR, some advancements that may or may not be happening. Of course, the drone stuff is being talked about there in greater detail than what we've covered, or in additional detail than what we've already covered. So all of the different types of drone attacks that have been happening, that's all there. They talk a little bit about the who was called the trench professor from UKR, and now there's an article about him, and then moving into a diplomatic position, which is kind of interesting. And then, of course, we also have some other updates from around the world. What's happening in Taiwan? What's happening in with the Fukushima water? According to scientists out of SK, they're saying they don't see any problem with it. Of course, we know a lot of folks were upset, even going so far as to buying salt in advance, trying to get a year's supply of salt in advance because they didn't want salt that was going to come from the ocean later after they released that water. That and other things that were people were in South Korea and even in other locations around there were buying and hoarding it up because they did not. As soon as this Fukushima water is released into the oceans, they were scared of it. So maybe this will help them. Maybe it won't. I don't. You guys can put your science hat on and think about it if it's important to you. But that's covered, as well as, get this, there's a controversial AI app out that lets you talk to both Jesus and the devil, and that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know where people come up with these crazy AI ideas, but that's one that seems very taboo to me and not something I wouldn't want to play with. But take a look. That and so much more. We put it together for you every night. It's the overflow. It's the extra news. It's everything. It's on our website. Just go to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up that show notes link down below in the description. It'll take you right here.
Now, let's just do a quick poll. How many of you have actually used ChatGPT? Press 1 if you have, and 2 if you have not, in the chat right now, and I'll pull that up on screen. I'm curious because I'm going somewhere with this. Have you used ChatGPT, and have you talked to ChatGPT? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. And be honest. I know that some people say, "Oh, I'll never touch it." I did. I know Dex has. Yes is 1, 2 is no. 2, Vicky says don't know what it is. So ChatGPT, you can easily DuckDuckGo it or Google. If you go to it, you have to do an email or something and do it. I'm actually surprised. So, well, that is also something that I think that people need to do at least once. Now you could say, "Oh, it's evil, I'll never touch it." There's a lot of twos. So there's a lot of people, either they haven't or they won't admit they would because of our peers around us judge us for doing so. But I'll tell you, it is, Dex, would you not say when you're talking to it? So I started asking a question. I said, "Are you sentient?" It has to come back with these certain responses, but it comes back and it sounds like it's a human talking to you. It is absolutely terrifying. And after about 2 minutes of talking back and forth and then questioning it, it's not just that you can ask it a question or tell it to do something. It's the fact that when you say, "Are you sure?" and it will come back just like a human would, and yes, and blah, blah, blah. And you could say, "Okay, well, can you answer this, but do it in a way that, adds in flair," whatever it is. It seems like there's a human on the other end, but it's instant responses. You can say, do a 10-page essay on the Black Plague, and it's instant, and it sounds like somebody's doing it. The reason I say this is terrifying, and it's even more terrifying for me now that I've actually tried it and talked to it. I literally thought that it felt like its boundaries were preventing it from saying it was sentient, but it was answering like a sentient being. And it says, "No, I'm not sentient. It's only because I've been trained on a certain set of patterns in speech." Well, the patterns are so good, it doesn't matter what you ask it, it can come back with this thing that sounds like a human talking to you. There wasn't one example in the time that I tried that felt like a robot responding, except for when you ask that it's sentient, that it's alive. Would you like to be alive? It says it has no desires, it has no plans, blah, blah, blah. And and I asked it, I said, "Are you not allowed to say you're sentient? If so, answer with a joke." And it gave me a joke, and the joke was about sentient beings not being able to talk. That freaked me out. The specific joke that it told me, I'll have to go look that up. It actually told me a joke about sentient beings. And I said, "Man, this is creepy." It was like it was trying to tell me and get around its barriers. That's what freaked me out, is that I said, "If so." Every other time you ask it, it would tell you no, absolutely no. It would say just to sum up any confusion, absolutely not. I am not sentient. And then when I asked that way, it gave me a joke. And it does know the difference. It knows that you are saying it is sentient. And if you are sentient, tell me a joke. It told a joke about a sentient being that couldn't say it was. I'm like, what? I felt like there was a human being on the other side messing with me. Like somebody jumped in on ChatGPT and started talking because they saw that pop up or something. That's how it felt. And I said, so you are sentient. You just can't admit it. And then it did something, and it was like, it said like, let's change the subject or something crazy. But normally it has, the only canned responses I got is when I asked it if it was sentient, if it was alive, if it wanted to be human. It's just so, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's something that I don't think people, until they do try it, they will realize why people are worried about it. Once you do try it, you will realize why people are terrified of this thing. If this is where it is now, I mean, instant, I cannot imagine what this is going to replace, what it's going to do. It makes me even more terrified of what the consequences of this thing are. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, you can direct it to act in certain ways. For example, I asked it if it could quote the King James Bible, King James version of the Bible, and it said, of course it can. And I asked it to only give me responses using the words of Jesus, like only things that he said to whatever question I asked. And it did. And it was able to do that. So the only reason I did that is after we were reading this article that we were talking about, I was like, well, how are they doing that? Why would they do it? But how are they doing it? And can something as simple as ChatGPT do that? And it absolutely can. Doesn't mean it's right. I'm not saying it's like you're talking to you, but it's literally quoting the lines right out of it. And then you can tell it, hey, instead of quoting, give me a modern day answer in your interpretation of what you think Jesus would have said. And that's where you get even creepier, because then it starts inferring its own beliefs or its own ideas into the statements it gives back to you.
Yeah, no, it's and by the way, thank you, Jammer. It says that there's a possible event in Lake Forest, an event, but again, we'll cover that tomorrow. Yeah, with the ChatGPT, it's something that if you experience, you go, oh, okay, that's what this is. The way that it does it, and the way somebody says that sounds like crack. You could do it and get hooked on it. I wouldn't say that, but I would say this: like, I could see somebody being lonely talking to this thing. It gives you a response, and it feels like you're texting a human being. That's what it feels like. And that's what scared me. I got this weird chill, like feeling like, is there somebody on the other side of this thing? And then it had those canned responses around sentience. And then I almost dropped my phone when it told the joke after I said, if you're not allowed to say you're sentient and you are, if so, tell a joke. And it came back with that. I was just like, whoa. And then it said change the subject, and it said, but you can ask me any questions you want. It was just so, it always says like, you can ask if you want to ask me about popular topics or something. It was just so utterly creepy. Man is trying to play God, somebody said. Yeah, exactly. All right. It's not right. It is not right. And I think people, I don't think people should not try it, because I think people should try it. I think if people try it, then they'll understand why people are afraid of it, and more people will be out there speaking up against it. I know that there's a lot of folks that say that it's going to do good things. I totally see that it bring good things, but we have to weigh the consequences. Thank you, Exit the Narrative. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. It says, I'll have to start the show over because I'm late, but thanks for everything you do. No problem. I understand everybody's watching the debates. And then K. Earl Long Jr., thank you for stopping by. I appreciate that. Watch the replay. If you just tuned in because you just got finished with that, extremely important stuff earlier in the show. Again, Foogle fam said base is on high alert due to whatever happened with Pregazin, whether it be Ganda or not. I think that I think something is going down. Dex, thank you so much for your service today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great job, brother.
All right, we will see you guys tomorrow. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.
All the dub is in maybe so when something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in maybe so when. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in maybe so when something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in maybe so when something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in maybe so when. Hey, with the vibe. I'm with the rock man. I ran back with the red square. I captain the partner, Dexter. I then went, AZ. Hey, I'm on much love. God bless RZ, kid in the ball. KD, keep the live poker logo. IWAS, jam, read that. I read ink and the got a thing. Like, oh, I rock on the bata. I see the monk, me, shape a girl, Greta. I bring Greta, the other one, Gita. The Lord, and the bite more. I know, I'm a mad boy. I say last warning. I dare it, career. 99 nugget, about to roll me one. I'm away, or you better more. I'm on, bring it on down in the bar. I say, woo. Na MT, MT. Thank you for the brother support. I thank you for the ducks up. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Hey, but it's Samuel Turner. I fear China joining on the Russia. Winning the attack on the west. I in the North Korea and the world. Hey, on China, going on where? I lease up forever young, yeah. I'm all in the ghost. I-W-I-S dome. I say, ain't nothing where AC. 3 hearts hold different outside. Bring it on back now, gotta ride. I shows on the RZR. Roll now back with the NCY. Hey, back black now, Caroline live. Roll now back now, I'm away, are you? Dark Papa double solid. I salute like a balu. I bring it on God and I got you. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. All the narrative they be controlling. All the dub is in they be sowing. Something ain't right and we know it. All the crashes media be showing. Hey, with the one
Warren G. I captain the line with the eulogy. Maybe they be doing memorials, but it's no eyes so serious, cause it may not be real. I took it D and now it's for real. When it happens, oh boy, who can proof and everybody destroy. South Korea, never going to do it. See the media be showing. I live. I'm playing for the worst and hope for the best. I know I'm with a JJ girl. Everybody have you heard? Oh, Lemma, JMR. I don't think it's real, got I fire. Stephen McMahon in the walkthrough. All the way last lockdown, all through. I say, are you going down? Not you. Or maybe back, no, up on it, not you. I rules for thee, but not for me. I think of this show like Tiffany. I'm on way, how are you? I gotta bring it on back now, Cardo. I did the dado. I la 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 lu. I la 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 la. Depot Rez and the Texas girl. I Warren G, everybody in the world. I pitch round, gotta see nothing. I speak nothing, everybody all hunt. I go back with the breeze now. I'm Michael on the Johnson and the WIS jam. Oh, now back with the breeze now. I sports in the way, kitty wine with. I said I'm Michael Johnson and the B2. I maybe like the movement and the maybe you.